Uh, so thank you to everyone for coming today. I'd like to start off by thanking both general members and alumni alike for attending this event. We're always very honored to have alumni come back to FASA events, whether you are a speaker or just an attendee for today. Added on to that, if you're an alumni, please put your full name in the chat, and also in addition to like what job or industry you're currently in, we think this would be a great way of seeing how far you've grown since your time in FASA. So we have three speakers today. Michelle Capobres, Marita Etcubanez, and Alyssa Duarte Reinagel. These alumni will be speaking on how both their Filipino identity and their identity as women has influenced their professional careers. In addition, given the recent events on the AAPI community in Atlanta and Marita's line of work, we feel that it will be a good opportunity for her to also speak on themes relating to the recent attacks on the Asian and Asian American community. So for introductions, Alyssa Duarte Reinagel grew up in Troy, Michigan, received her bachelor's in electrical engineering from Michigan in 1997, and she was president of FASA for its 10th anniversary from 96 to 97, which resulted in a great celebration. Since joining Boeing after graduating from Michigan, Alyssa has pushed Boeing to recycle more and sees this as one of her greatest accomplishments outside of her everyday work scope. In addition, Alyssa has had a very diverse career, which has allowed her to support the warfighter during wartime, travel internationally, and do a stint in corporate treasury, all while getting opportunity to see many different aspects of the company, from commercial to defense to corporate. For those of you who are not aware of this program, FASA now has a FASA house sorting system with 4 houses similar to Hogwarts. So there's swag, ham, excellence, and dirty, which has become a staple of FASA's culture. Also a staple of alumni events is that I get every alumni to fill out the sorting form as well. And as we already know, Alyssa is a return speaker. We're happy to have you, and she is a dirty alumni. So our next speaker, Michelle, is the Vice President of Strategy and Learning at Aim High, an educational nonprofit that provides free summer academic and enrichment programs to middle school students in Northern California. Prior to joining Aim High 10 years ago, Michelle was the Education Program Officer for the World Affairs Council of Northern California. She began her career in education as an English teacher in China and taught high school social studies for several years. Michelle holds a BA in Asian Studies from the University of Michigan and MA in Social Studies Education from Teachers College Columbia University, and an MPA with a focus on nonprofit administration from San Francisco State University. Michelle was also kind enough to fill out our FAM sorting form, and she was also sorted into Dirty Fam. Dirty as alumni now, which is pretty funny. Okay, and so our last speaker, as Director of Strategic Initiatives for Asian Americans Advancing Justice, or AAJC, Marita advocates on civil rights issues impacting the Asian American community and manages varied projects, including anti-hate efforts, supporting naturalization services in the DC metropolitan area, and working with Advancing Justice, AAJC's community partners to produce demographic reports on Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities. Prior to joining AAJC, Marita was director of Legal Services for the Asian Pacific American Legal Resource Center in Washington, D.C. Her experience providing legal assistance to low-income communities also includes working with labor pool workers as part of the Homeless Persons Representation Project in Baltimore and advocating on behalf of migrant and seasonal farm workers with Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. Marita holds a law degree with a bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan. Marita also filled out our FAM sorting form, and she was sorted into Swag Fam. So,
I thought you said you didn't fill it out.
No, she did. She did.
You know what? It's my days are a blur. Yay! I'm glad I did. Thank you. Y'all will have to tell me what that means.
Yes. So finally,
swag. Yes, ma'am.
Alumni.
Is this the first Swag alumni?
Yes, it is the first Swag alumni. So congrats. And if it wasn't mentioned before, all of these speakers were graduates from FASA and the University of Michigan in the year 1997. So with introduction out of the way, I believe Alyssa will be starting us off, and then we'll go into Michelle and then Marita. Keep in mind, each speaker will talk for approximately 18 to 20 minutes uninterrupted. If you have questions, either save them for the Q&A section or type them in chat, and I will save them myself for the Q&A section for you. So, questions at the end, but feel free to compile them as you think of them. So Alyssa, I believe you can take it away.
Okay, thanks, Sean. So many of you might have met me at the first alumni panel with Reno last year. So I tried to just include a little bit of that as a refresher, but what you see in the background here is one of the tools we use at Boeing that's called the Diversity Blueprint. It really speaks to the intersections of a person's whole background experience. So I just have that there as a background. Just a really quick recap from the prior panel. Some info on me. Ah-LEE-sah is how you pronounce it. I know there's this other Alyssa person that is very popular, but we don't pronounce it that way. So just, real quick, obviously college years, 93 to 97, just my background with electrical engineering and the different things I was involved in college. And then early career, I carried a lot of that over with me from college activities into career, being involved in environmental groups, National Engineers Week, and BAPA, the Asian Pacific American group. At work, all my different work experiences we've talked about before in engineering and in corporate, and then got into management and different activities there with research and technology, and ultimately now in the technology strategy role. And then you can see sort of the family aspect over here, and again, all of these things impact the intersections of my personality and what's affected my experiences. So that's just a really quick recap of what we covered in the last panel. Moving from there, you can sort of see the blueprint that I use, and we'll use these in our work groups to talk about our different aspects of ourselves, right? The different experiences and identities that we have. I think Reno in the last panel talked a lot about code switching. I actually don't think I do much code switching at work. I don't think I act any differently in work versus outside of work. I know Reno talked a lot about that in the last panel, but for me, I think I've always been pretty true to myself at work. This month being Women's History Month, we did have some good panels from our leaders, and some of the key messages that came from that were, take a seat at the table. When I was in like one of my first management roles at Boeing, I held a meeting for all of the different experts across Boeing in the vehicle health management arena. And I was the only female in the room of 40 people, all mostly white men. And I was sitting at the head of the table. When we go for breaks, I'd be like, okay, you got a one function break is what we call it. You can go to the bathroom, you can take a call, you can, do one function. And I told the guys, good luck with the bathroom, because I have it all to myself. So, but I always like to, I guess, in terms of that part of my identity and personality, I always made sure that people were aware of the fact that, yes, I'm the only woman in the room. And you can sort of see that I tried to do what is a more of a PowerPoint version of a Venn diagram. But, my gender definitely affects my role in how I am presented or how I work at Boeing. Motherhood in particular has impacted my career to some extent, right? I had a director when I was having my second child. I actually had them very close together. And I was actually afraid to tell my management that I was having another child. And my director actually said to me, well, actually my senior manager at the time, I'd known him since I started at work, and he actually said to me, well, I think we've known each other pretty well. We're friends. How many kids do you think you're going to have? And I was just like, I guess 2. Since I'm having a girl, I'll have one of each. I'll be done. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's very different how women are treated even nowadays at work, especially in engineering. But that's part of the, take a seat at the table. Every time I go into a meeting, I encourage others to come sit at the table. Often women will sit on the periphery. So that's one of them. Be brave, speak up. I definitely have that underneath ethnicity, being Filipino. I've always felt that Filipinos are very loud and proud, brown and proud, right? We're not necessarily like the other Asians with the different archetypes and stereotypes applied to Asians out there. So, that's, I think, one of the things that has affected my identity at work and just in general. Like I said, in my career with engineering, being in management too, I'm not a typical engineer that you would see back in the day. I know you guys have all changed, everyone's evolved, and everything's cool nowadays with being a nerd and, and things like that. So back in the day, I remember when I started and people would meet me, they're like, "You're an engineer?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Oh, you don't seem like an engineer." "Well, why?" "Because I'm female and I talk to people." I don't know. But yeah, definitely I'm very logical. I have a love of math, and hence the attempt at doing a Venn diagram here with wonderful smart tools and PowerPoint. And then of course, my religion, I'm Catholic, definitely those values come hand in hand with being Filipino too. It's definitely an intersection with my role as a mother, and I'm very active at my kids' school. And I guess going back to Filipino American, being Filipino and being a female, I think I might have shared this in the last one, but I've actually been told at Boeing that my ethnicity trumps my gender. So when we're counting who's on a team or how much diversity we have, I'm counted as Asian and not as a woman. That was interesting for me to learn. I hear that they're fixing that. I don't know how. Boeing's supposed to share their diversity numbers sometime this month, and I have yet to see them. But definitely, I think, like I said, being Filipino has helped me be proud of who I am. Being a female has definitely made me more aware of my role and my minority status as part of that role. I've had comments in my career as people ask me, "Oh, how did you get the job?" or "Why did you get the job?" And I've actually told them I interviewed for it, or I applied for the job and I interviewed for it and they selected me. And I actually had someone respond once, "Oh, the announcement was written like it was given to you, you were appointed." And that just sort of goes to show how, how the words that are used really matter. So when, you're advocating for other women or other ethnicities, the words that you use matter. But definitely, like I have there in the sort of key takeaways, speak up, tell your story, and use your voice. And so I hope I spoke to the topic that that Sean wanted us to speak to. But I know that Marita is going to talk about it later in this talk in the panel. But the things that are happening in the world today, like with George Floyd earlier last year, and now this I guess hate crime really in Atlanta. Boeing and managers at Boeing in particular have been encouraged to discuss diversity, inclusion, and really have those difficult discussions. And I think from my perspective, being a female, being an Asian, and being in a management role, it's very important for me to speak up, tell my story, and use my voice. Sometimes I feel like it's expected, and it is. And sometimes I also feel like I need to, because no one else is going to hear that experience. So yeah, that's what I have to share. I don't think I have anything else after this. I just have a slide for questions, and I know I probably went really quick, so I'm going to leave a lot of time for the very very talented Michelle and Marita to talk, and because I know you guys have to some extent already heard from me. So, any questions? Or Sean, were we waiting for the end of the panel?
Yeah, so we'll compile the questions. If you have any questions, please save them for the end. But thank you, Alyssa. And if you could stop screen sharing, we'll just transition right into Michelle. So,
okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Alyssa. And now I'm just like, you were really brief, and then now I'm going to feel like I'm going to go really long. But I put in the chat a bunch of letters, and whenever, this is probably really California of me now that I've been in California for 15 years. But we're going to do a breathing exercise in between people, because I think sometimes we just need a little brain break. And so, so I'm going to do this. So M means mouth and N means nose. So we're going to first, I'm super California right now, aren't I? Okay, we're going to first breathe in through the mouth. So, and breathe out the mouth. Breathe in the nose. Breathe out the nose. Breathe in the mouth. Breathe out the nose. Breathe in the nose. And breathe out the mouth. Okay. Thank you. I needed that probably more than anybody else to get ready. So I am going to, we're going to see if this works, because I have a video and I'm not able to click. Wait, hold on a second. Okay. Sure. Hi everyone. My name is Michelle Capobres. And you already heard a little bit about me. So we're gonna start with some music. And I want this to ground us. And this is, most of you probably know this song. I'm not gonna do the whole song right now. Just the part that matters at this moment. And this is Us by Ruby Ibarra. And it's the song I didn't know I needed. And it's really about the strength of being a Filipina. And so I'm gonna play it really quick, and I put the words of this part that is Faith Santilla kind of speaking. So
let it be
can you hear it? Thumbs up if you
don't
can.
already. Pinays have always been part and parcel, if not imperative and critical to the struggle. Filipinas are no strangers to wielding our own power. Of all the privileges that exist in this world, none of which you may be a benefactor of, there is at least one you bear, and that is the privilege of having been born a Filipina. Your DNA contains building blocks made from the mud of over 500 years of resistance and survival, and when you are ready, sis, we'll be right here.
Okay. So I'm going to use some of the parts that I highlighted. You know, I think we all know that there's a lot of strength in being a Filipina. Alyssa talked about being brown and proud and loud and proud. And, you know, I'm going to take you through a journey of like the times when I felt this strength, and then the times when I felt this strength diminished or quieted or silenced, and how I sort of maneuvered my way through this. And you know, hopefully we can all learn from it. And I'm still on this road, right? And you know, and again, with Marita talking about what we're going to talk about later, you know, right now is feeling, you know, really vulnerable time to be a woman and Asian. And so, you know, in some of the recent violence happened, I live in Oakland, California. A lot of this has been happening outside my door. And so, you know, really feeling this right now. So, whoops, no. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to take you back to growing up for me. And I'm going to use this opportunity to show as many embarrassing pictures of myself and maybe other people in this room. So, you know, I grew up in Westland, Michigan and Canton, Michigan. At the time, I know it's not so true right now, but at the time, these were very, you know, white dominated areas, predominantly white. But surprisingly, I grew up surrounded by Filipinos. I had my family. I lived in an intergenerational home. My grandmothers lived with me at different times. At different times, my parents' siblings lived with us, or my mom's siblings especially. And also for some reason, there were these family, my parents' friends moved from Detroit to Westland and to Canton with each other. And so I always had other Filipino families in my neighborhood. So, so in a lot of ways, I, you know, didn't even realize that I was living in a kind of a predominantly white neighborhood for the most part. And so maybe this was unique. I don't know if this was an intentional on my parents' part, but I'm really happy. And to add to this, I had really strong Filipino role models. So on the left is my mom, and she was a nurse. She went back to school, became a CRNA. My grandmother was also a nurse. She was also a single mother for most of her life. So, and she also raised me, and that's my dad. That's my paternal grandmother. And then, you know, and the other part is that both my grandmother and my mom were matriarchs. My grandmother, because she was a single mother for much of her life, my grandfather basically started another family. That's a whole other story. But my mom, you know, she's in that top picture. She's the 1, 2, 3, 4 fourth from the left. I probably should have gone from the right, but she was the eldest. And so she brought most of her brothers and sisters to America. She came as a nurse. And so she really was a matriarch of our family. So I just really quickly, just to do some audience participation, and I won't be able to see these, but I just want to, because once I hit something else, I won't be able to present anymore. But you know, I just want to shout out all the strong Filipina matriarchs that kind of led us here in honor of Women's History Month. So if people can like write, you know, if I were there, I would put in Virgie Capobres and Alfreda Capobres in there, so people can write their names so we can send out that energy. And this is both my late mother and my late grandmother, but they really led the way. So basically, as a kid, like I grew up, you know, thinking as a Filipina that I was in control. I was in the driver's seat. I could be and do anything, right? And then comes K through 12, and then I go to school. And I think things changed a little bit for me. I just really wanted to fit in. You know, and what fitting in meant was just, I was often embarrassed of being Filipino, of my immigrant parents. And fitting in basically meant being more white. And to do this, and I did this in order to survive, to be more what we call success. I'm going to keep using quotes, but successful, and to try to gain what we call, I'm going to call it, well, I'm not going to call it, it's called white proximity, right? So this idea of being as close to the top of the caste or white as you could, so that you can reap some of the benefits. And so I did. So I feel like, especially when I was at school, I just kind of quieted down a lot of the Filipino parts of me in order to really get through school and be successful. I bared through bullying and microaggressions that aren't really micro, you know, and really, and I think I was successful at this. I was really good actually at code switching and fitting in. And so much so that there was this time in high school, I remember this other Filipino friend of mine came up to me and he just looked at me, he said, "You sound so white." And it was weird because I was kind of proud of that, you know, because in a weird way, I you know, I was a little bit like, what are you talking about? But so that was kind of my school life. I will say, and then Alvin, there you are, you're in the middle there somewhere. I will say that there was the Filipino pride happened a lot outside of school because I had a lot of Filipino friends. And so, and here are some of them from high school. Some of them are in the Zoom room. And then I went to college. And I have a picture with someone brushing his teeth, but that's cool. So, you know, and I feel like I gained a bit more of this Filipino pride started coming back again for a number of reasons. One, I was an Asian studies major, so I was learning a lot more about the Asian culture and history, and just really soaking that in and understanding what the struggle is about as a Filipina, as an Asian. And then, you know, I also attended, you know, was part of FASA. I think the two top pictures are from and FAIA, which was that national Filipino conference that we hosted at Michigan. And the bottom right is actually my first new friend at Michigan, Judy. She's Taiwanese. And so I also was in the Asian community at Michigan. So much so that I was, not only did I dance with FASA in a cultural show, but I was also in the Chinese cultural show. People were a little bit confused with me. I also took Mandarin, so there's a lot going on there. But again, my Filipino pride really started to come up again. You know, at the same time, I was kind of building my resume. I was an Asian studies major. I went to China to, work on my Mandarin. I also interned at the White House, which is in the middle. And so there's a little story about this is when Filipino parents especially would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I get really annoyed. I was kind of a brat and I'd be like, Secretary of State, right? So what I really wanted to intern at the State Department. So this is a weird story, but I also applied to intern at the White House, and the White House, I got the acceptance of the White House first. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then, maybe a month later at 7:30 in the morning, I get a call from the State Department offering me a position, an unpaid position in Xi'an, China. And I'm like, I already have an internship. I just didn't know any better that I could call the White House, well, not the intern person at the White House and say, you know what, I have a different, I really want to work at the State Department. And they would have been fine. They would have been fine. There's tons of people that want to work there. But I say this because this shifted my life a lot, the fact that I did not work at the State Department. And then I came back and interned at Washtenaw Literacy in the same summer. So we're gonna fast forward to post-college. Immediately after college, again, I was an Asian studies major. I wanted to, live in Asia. And so I moved to Wuhan, China, a place that people did not know much about before, but now they do. And I taught English there. And so I'm in the middle of that picture in a maroon t-shirt. I know I look like everybody else in that picture. When I was in Wuhan, they were living in China and working in China, this code switching or me using this privilege, that two different privileges that I had. One was I was Asian, I could blend in and not get noticed. My other privilege that I utilized was that proximity to whiteness / being American. And I would get, and I would know when to play up my Americanness and be able to, I just had privileges. I had my own TV show, which is a whole other situation. But it was kind of crazy. But this was all in line with my career around, being Secretary of State. And I came back and worked at Princeton-in-Asia for 2 years. So I moved to New Jersey, worked for Princeton-in-Asia, which is the best job, because when you come back from being abroad, people ask you, how was it? And then you have all this stuff to say, but no one really wants to know unless they themselves are going to Asia. So I got to talk about my life a lot in Asia. I had this great boss who was lived in the Philippines. She was a white woman who lived in the Philippines. And so it was pretty cool. But Princeton-in-Asia has a lot of legacy in missionaries and a lot of, kind of this colonial mentality. So that's also something to understand. And then I did a career shift. I moved away from the State Department thing and I became a teacher. And so the thing that I really learned is that, it's not linear. For a lot of people, their career trajectory is not linear. And for me, it wasn't entirely. And there are a few things that happened in my life that really spoke to me becoming a teacher. And one is again, I didn't go to China with the State Department. I ended up staying here, and then my roommate got me an internship at Washtenaw Literacy, and I started to like understand a little bit more about the inequities in education, and I became really interested in that. And then when I was in China, I ended up falling in love with teaching. So I came back and became a teacher, started in New York. But I'm not going to get too far into that, but and I'll talk a little bit about teaching while Filipina. And Trisha last month talked a lot about this, you know, that again, the teaching is like a very white woman dominated industry. This right here is a chart of San Francisco Unified, which is, you know, out here in the Bay Area. And so you can see that, you know, the students are, there's 50, and this is an urban area. So I just want to point this out. This is like really typical. The students are 15% of them are white, but nearly 47% of the teachers are white, right? One thing I will say about San Francisco, which I think is unique, first of all, we actually count Filipinos outside of Asians. So you'll see the orange bar is Filipino. So the student population is 5% Filipino, and the teacher is 3.5%. So really close. And so it's really cool. I know a lot of Filipino educators. The problem is it's still a white dominated field, and in our spaces, you know, they dominate the culture, also sometimes not aware of their implicit biases. So what I learned as an educator is to build community with other teachers of color. And the picture on the right is of, I was on the board of people of color in independent schools. I started teaching in independent schools, which are really dominated by not only, you know, kind of white people, but money, right? And so this space was really hard for a lot of teachers, teachers of color, students of color, families of color to really find their voice. And so being on this board, I really started to find my voice by helping others, by amplifying the voices of teachers and students and families of color. And so this is one way that I really started to build back this strength. Also as a teacher, I recognize my role as a role model. So there's some of my students, but on the right were my advisees, my last year in teaching. And one thing and they got to pick their advisor. And so I want you to notice that what do you notice? There are 2 Filipinas in that group. There are 2 Asians, you know, or three other, you know, basically all of the Filipino students, like all 2 of them, flocked to me. And so really recognizing, you know, me as a teacher of color, as a Filipina, as an Asian, that, you know, that I was kind of a safe sanctuary for some students because they could relate to me. And so, you know, so I really started to recognize like what that meant to younger people. And now we go to career shift number 2, which is going into the nonprofit world. I started at the World Affairs Council, as he noted. So this is after 7 years of teaching. I was well into what I felt was my career. And I started at the bottom, basically. I was getting paid, I was getting paid a lot less than being a teacher, first of all. I worked at Banana Republic half the time too, because I just needed money to live. And I was an educator. So what I learned was that my skills as a teacher were not translating into the other world, career world. So people would ask me things like, can you multitask? Which was like mind blowing to me. I was just like, I've got all these students in a class, like, what do you mean, can I, you know, multitask? So just want to lift up a little bit about the nonprofit world, especially around leadership. Again, another very white dominated space. Leadership. So from this state of diversity, nonprofit and foundation leadership, 87% of all executive directors or presidents, I think that includes foundations of nonprofits, are white. Second, the percentage of people of color in executive / CEO has remained under 20% for the last 15 years. And that's in 2019. So this was a really daunting world for me to enter into, especially, trying to find my way into leadership. So the first place I worked was at the World Affairs Council. Jane Wales was the president and CEO, a white woman. There's me on the right with General Petraeus, but I'm not gonna dwell on that. And then the next one, and I've been at AIM High now for 10 years. So the executive director is a white man. He's the founding executive director. He's been there for 35 years. And I'll talk a little bit about him in a second, and then there's us on the right. I'm somewhere in the front in an ugly sweater, in my mom's ugly sweater that she bought, not ironically. It's got cats on it. I love it. But so I'll tell you about Alec. Like, he's a really well-intentioned, good man, right? And he wants to do everything he can for people. And then there are times, when he doesn't recognize that he is silencing people. When people speak up against him, he doesn't know. It's interesting, but he knows a little bit now. But it was hard sometimes, and especially when you've got this person that is like really a nice person, well-intentioned, wants to do right by the world. And this is like the hard thing in nonprofits when we're talking about anti-racism, which I will get to a second. And so, climbing up the leadership ladder, here are some of the things that helped me. And a lot of this has to do with me, the lessons I learned in K through 12 of that white proximity, of being able to like talk white. Buzzwords. People love buzzwords, right? And so, if I could throw in, something about, I can't think right now, but growth mindset, or some sort of buzzword, it was just going to go so far, right? The second is data. Man, people love data. They love the numbers. Can I measure it? No matter the fact that it's in education. And so as soon as I was like, could prove that I could analyze data really well and talk about it, that helped. Culture fit. I'm going to put culture fit and centering white/male comfort together. A lot of times I stayed silent if things were uncomfortable for me, because I didn't want to upset that nice white man, right? Like, he's well-intentioned. I don't want to make him feel bad because he said something. Sometimes I would speak up, right? But I never pushed anything because I didn't want to make him uncomfortable. So what was that? I mean, it helped me climb up the leadership ladder, but it caused a lot of imposter syndrome in me, and also showed my internalized racism. So I'm gonna end pretty soon. So just this past year, as Alyssa was talking, we've been doing a lot of anti-racist training and reflecting, and it's been hard, right? It's been hard. It's been, that nice white man I think he's had tears, which means it's working. So, and so some of the things that I'm thinking about now are, instead of like these buzzwords, is really grounding in theory and listening. Like, why are these things good for students, right? Instead of like just leaning on those words. Data to like, what are the stories beneath these numbers, right? What are the real people under these numbers really using? Instead of culture fit, like, how am I as a Filipino woman a culture ad? And then centering white comfort to speaking my truth. So through all of these anti-racist trainings, I said to my boss, I'm like, here's how anti-racism has been or how racism has been working in me. I've been keeping silent and I'm working on speaking out. And so now he'll look at me, he's like, are you staying silent right now? I'm like, maybe. He's like, okay, then just tell me what you think. So I've been able to use my voice. It still hurts both ways sometimes, but I'm practicing it a lot more. So I see reclaiming my wholeness, and to the answer, Faith, sis, I am ready. And so that I'm going to end there. We can listen to this later because I might have taken up too much time.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Well, it's playing. I can't make it stop.
Okay, sorry. I did mute you because it was pretty loud, but we can circle back to it at some point. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Michelle. And to end us, we have Marita speaking.
Yeah, so hello everyone, Marita Etcubanez. I fully intended to have slides for you, and I had in my head mapped out a presentation along the lines of what Michelle did, but probably wouldn't have been nearly as nice. But I have to say, work has taken over my life in recent weeks, and honestly, recent events have upended what I intended to do. So I will get to all that. But to back up a bit about me, I am actually a first-generation immigrant. I was born in the Philippines, but my parents immigrated to the United States when I was less than a year old. So I'm only technically a first-generation immigrant. To my everlasting shame, I do not speak Tagalog well. It was my first language, but once I started school here in the US, I got teased. And no one should ever be able to make binding life decisions at the age of 5 or 6, because it was at that time that I was like, all right, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not speaking Tagalog anymore. And consequently, I lost my language skills, which is just sad. So I grew up in Michigan, spent elementary and junior high in a small town called Standish, Michigan. It's near the Thumb. I think there were only about 1,500 people there when I was growing up, literally a one stoplight town. And the only reason there was a stoplight is because I-75 went through our town. Spent my high school years in Bay City, Michigan, which was a little bigger, but not much, right? So honestly, I wanted to get out of Michigan, really, really did. But my parents sold me on the merits of the University of Michigan. So in-state tuition, I stayed, and actually it was the right choice. I loved it. I graduated with a BA in history in 1997. Ended up going straight to law school, also at Michigan. So 7 years in Ann Arbor, straight through. I was one of those kids that wrote my law school personal statement about how I wanted to go to law school so I could learn to use my voice to help people. I wanted to do public interest. And I say that because it's trite, right? It's a cliche, but at the same time, I'm really proud that I've been able to make it happen. I have spent my entire career doing public interest work and working in nonprofits. So a lot of what Michelle said really resonated with me. I will loop back to that. But I will admit that a lot of that is only possible because, well, one, I was fortunate that my parents were able to help me with college, had the benefit of in-state tuition, but also was able to take advantage of loan repayment assistance programs, which first through the University of Michigan and then through the DC Bar program. Was actually those programs that enabled me to pay off my law school debt, earning relatively little as a nonprofit lawyer. So I spent 10 years working as a legal aid attorney for several different organizations. So for those that aren't familiar, that means I worked for nonprofit organizations that provide free legal assistance to indigent individuals, right? And in my case, since I was serving immigrant communities, also generally people who don't speak English well. Did that for 10 years, which I know this timeline places me closer to your parents than all of you, but that's fine. Then I transitioned to advocacy work. So I am now working with an organization called Asian Americans Advancing Justice in Washington, DC. We're a nonprofit organization that advocates on civil rights issues impacting the Asian American community. Some of our central core issues are immigration rights, voting rights, hate crimes, and anti-discrimination work. So my title with the organization is Director of Strategic Initiatives, which is really just a fancy way of saying they give me the special projects that don't belong to anyone else. So I handle our naturalization portfolio. I am our jack of all trades. I have been lucky to be able to handle immigration matters related to Filipino World War II veterans, affirmative action, which interestingly, I have a long history with because it was during my first year of law school at the University of Michigan that the Grutter and Gratz lawsuits were filed. So we spent the reading period of my first year of law school, which is clearly the most grueling year of law school because there's just so much uncertainty. We spent that time huddled in our FASA office writing our statement in response to the lawsuit. So I tell people all the time, 20 years, we're still at it. The arc of justice is long. And also, again, our anti-hate work. So here, I am deviating from my original plans because I want to spend some time talking to you about the hate and harassment that our Asian American communities have been facing over the past year. We often refer to this as a dual pandemic that our communities are facing, right? We're dealing with the pandemic of COVID-19 and all that that entails, and racism related to COVID-19, right? Because we know that there are many people out there who are irrationally and wrongly, but still somehow blaming our communities for the coronavirus. My organization has been tracking hate crimes and hate incidents along with other organizations, and collectively we have received thousands of individual reports of hate crimes and hate incidents that members of our community have faced. It involves racial slurs, people weaponizing the term coronavirus, coughing and spitting on us, telling people they're going to be deported, telling people they need to go back home to their country, people being cursed out for wearing masks and for not wearing masks. And you know that we've had some really serious incidents that have made the news, right? There was early on in the pandemic last spring, there was a family in Texas that was stabbed by someone who blamed them for causing the coronavirus. It was a father and his 2 young children. And then more recently, this spate of violent attacks against our Asian elders. I mean, it's heartbreaking to see. But I think, there are many who have perhaps not entirely, I feel like people haven't really seen a lot of what our community has faced over the past year. They kind of diminish it, like, oh, it can't be that serious. And sadly for our community, as with Black communities, I think a lot of what forced people to realize what we're facing is the fact that a lot of this has been caught on film, right? Like there are videos, it's undeniable. No one wants to see like Lolo knocked down in the street, right? So that just forced greater attention to be paid to the issue. And so this is what we're living in, right? This is 2020, this is 2021. Our communities are already reeling. And now, just 2 days ago, we have this mass shooting in Atlanta. So I wanted to create some space for us to talk about this, but I know that these can be sensitive and difficult topics to discuss. So if you'd rather not engage because you came here for a career panel, totally fine. Feel free to tune out for the next 5 minutes or so. I will not judge you. Feel free to tune out, totally fine, because I know this is probably not what you came here for. But okay, so if those who needed to leave, I'll give you a minute, second, not a full minute. The fact that this mass shooting happened at all is horrifying. I know lots of people were already feeling great tension and fear, right? Because of everything that's happening in our communities. And then what happened 2 nights ago was just like, it's hard. Worse, there are a lot of really challenging narratives around what happened. We need to center the victims when things like this happen, right? But I think in a quest to say it nicely, to understand the cause, but let's, often to sensationalize. There's a lot of focus on the accused, right? That's problematic, but in this case, I feel like the narratives that have emerged at the beginning of all of this are really problematic, right? Like we've heard how law enforcement is talking about what happened. So I think part of centering the victims is finding ways to honor them and acknowledge their humanity, but that also includes contesting the idea that this crime had nothing to do with race or sex, right? 6 Asian women were murdered. The killer deliberately went to massage parlors, Asian businesses, businesses where Asian women work. So regardless of how the police and the media may be characterizing this or how the case is ultimately prosecuted, we cannot look at this without acknowledging the roles that race and sex have played. Racism and misogyny were clearly at play here, whether that is borne out at the end on how the case progresses. But we know that Asian women endure both harassment that is both racist and sexist, and often both, right? Like a lot of times you can't untangle it. We can't lose sight of that, and we have to make the media and decision makers acknowledge that. So I hope we can find time in the question and answer if you all want to engage in this to talk about this more, but I just want to acknowledge that the pain that you're feeling, the pain that our communities are feeling right now, it's real. So is the fear, right? So we have to find ways to help one another. That's gonna be our only way through. For our part, we are lifting up the work of leaders on the ground and amplifying their calls to action, right? So my organization is based in DC. We have an affiliate in Atlanta, and they really are doing tremendous work in this moment. Like the night that this happened, they were there, identifying and working to serve the immediate needs of the community, including safeguarding community safety, right? They have been clear that their calls for justice, the justice that they seek is greater community safety, which means greater investment in mental health resources and alternatives to law enforcement, right? They do not want increased policing, and certainly don't want the calls for safety for the Asian American community to mean greater prosecution and incarceration of Black and Brown communities, right? So we need to work with other communities of color to promote answers to community safety that don't harm others, and also call for larger systemic solutions that address the root causes of racism and white supremacy. So we'll continue doing this work. I'll continue doing this work. Sean invited us to talk about how our Filipino American identities and identities as women have impacted and influenced our careers. And I feel like with this conversation, I'm doing that, right? We have to talk about these issues. We have to protect our communities. And then for me, I've deliberately chosen work environments that espouse social justice, right? Now, as Michelle has highlighted, nonprofit organizations are not perfect. They are not. But for the most part, working in Asian American spaces, I have not had to code switch or hide aspects of my identity to fit in, right? Of course, working to represent the interests of a relatively small minority group within the federal government does involve navigating, operating, and contesting a predominantly white and male environment. That's real. But for the most part, I feel that, what is my charge to protect the civil rights of my community? In doing that work, I feel like I've always been able to bring my whole self to my work and to what I do. And I really value the ability and the privilege to be able to do that. So I look forward to engaging with you more on all of these things that I've raised, but I also hope that you'll be able to find that, being able to bring your whole self to whatever you do, be able to find that for yourselves in whatever careers you enter into. So thank you.
No, thank you, Marita. I just want to point out, I am very grateful that you incorporated this into your conversation, because us living in Ann Arbor is very much so a bubble in which it's at times hard to get these types of perspectives, especially conveniently from a FASA alumni as well. So thank you for addressing that. And so at this point, from now until 6:30, we'll enter into a Q&A section. So if you have a question, and this is for any of the topics that are that were addressed today, please type it in chat, and then it'll be first come, first serve. I will just indicate, well, I'll ask that person, would you like to unmute? And then you can go ahead and speak. And I believe, Christine, you had a question to start us off?
Yes, I do. Hi, everyone. My name is Christine, currently serving as external chair on FASA board. I am a sophomore undergrad studying chemical engineering. And first, I want to thank all of you for sharing your backgrounds and your stories. It's very informative and relatable for sure. And in light of recent events, thank you so much, by the way, for shedding light on that. I was just wondering, steering it more towards career aspect of it, how can individuals be an ally to women in the workforce?
So this is Alyssa. Actually, I was just on a work panel. Funny, I was on a work panel before the last panel we had for FASA, but it was related to. It was actually sponsored by the Black Boeing Research Group, and funny enough, there was not a Black person on the panel. It was 2 Asians, a white male, and a white female. But the moderator was Black, and we actually had a similar question on how can allies support diverse teammates that may be dealing with imposter syndrome, and so I had responded to that with at least I feel like allies at Boeing for me have done a good job in this. I mentioned someone asking, oh, how did I get that job? Well, one way is actually, being careful with your language. If someone of, a person of color speaks up in the meeting, and of course, and if you agree with them, right, reinforcing and supporting them and not just dismissing or ignoring their comments. I've actually found, when I've been in meetings, I might have said this before, when I've been in meetings and I've said something and then they've just, people in the meeting just totally overlook it. And then a male sitting at the table says it. And then, well, that's a great idea. Whereas I've had allies actually say, well, actually, Alyssa just said this, but I think that, so that's a very good way, I think, to reinforce. And, just even yourself, when you're in a room with another person of color that needs support, do the same, right? Power in numbers, right? But I think definitely the best allies are very good about acknowledging and recognizing the ideas of the person of color. And I guess I'll say it this way, giving some credibility there, lending some of their white credibility to those people of color.
I will take this in a bit of a different direction. I feel like mentors are important, right? So I think it's important that you all cultivate mentors who can help you and guide you. I've had so many over the years that have pushed me to do things that I probably wouldn't have done otherwise, which is important, right? To challenge yourself and push yourself out of your comfort zone. So definitely seek out and cultivate mentors, but then also as you are moving up, reach back and be a mentor to others, right? So that is one way that you can contribute and keep things going. Now I say that also acknowledging that as a woman and a person of color, oftentimes, this is something you might want to do, but you're also going to be carrying a heavier burden because the people who feel an affinity with you will come to you. And there may be times that you're like, okay, I want to help you, but work is really tough right now. I'm facing family challenges and I can't take this on too, right? So sort of you want to be there for others, but I also recognize that, I think women and people of color, it's a legitimate complaint that they feel like they are doubly burdened in the workplace because of their desire to look out for and shepherd other people along.
Well, let me tag on to that, as I have pointed one of my mentees toward Marita and Michelle and another friend. So, I definitely feel one of my roles as a mentor is connecting people. So if I can't fill that role for a mentee, I feel like just knowing people that they can reach out to. So I love that we're connected more here, Marita and Michelle and I, because one of my mentees, she's in engineering at Boeing, and she's like, but I've always wanted to go into government service. And I was like, wait a second, I knew 2, 3, 4 people that I can connect you with that I think, merely from the fact of just building the network, but also learning from their experiences will benefit her greatly, because right now she's struggling. Like, I'm an engineer, but I'm not really liking what I'm doing, and I ultimately want to be working for the Secretary of State. I did not know that about you, Michelle, so I'm going to remind her to ask you about that. But yeah, or you remember to bring it up if you haven't met with her already. But definitely, having this frank conversation, sharing your experiences, and being able to connect them to others that can share their experiences. I think that's a big part of giving back, and as as we get older and wiser.
I just want to +1 everything that both Alyssa and Marita said, and then something. And I did speak with with the person, your mentee already, and one thing that I did say to her, because I could see the imposter syndrome sort of like creeping up, and and one thing I mentioned is when you apply for something, your chances go way up, right? So there is, and there was this statistic that I saw, I don't know what the numbers exactly, but it's just that men, if they see a job description, if they fit like half of what the expectations are, they're going to apply for it. Whereas women especially will like, I need to be 100% all of these things unicorn. You do not need to be 100% all these things unicorn. Plus, and this culture add piece is like, recognize what you are bringing to the table. And I think people are a lot more open now to not trying to find that culture fit, but who's going to add perspective to our team. So I think people are maybe moving beyond the performative like diversity numbers. I'm not going to say that 100%, but I think that some people are recognizing that like bringing on people with different perspectives, especially at a leadership table, will make them a better place.
And definitely, Michelle, exactly what you just said. I actually just told a teammate of mine, she was told to apply for an executive job. She's like, I don't even have any of those qualifications. Like, men read it as, I may fit this little one, so I'm going to apply. And women read as, I don't fit this little one, so there's no way I can apply, right? This little attribute that they may list on the thing. And that is definitely a statistic I've heard too. So, never count yourself out. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. I heard that so much as my kids went through basketball season. And it's so true, right? So, just go for it.
And thank you all. Yeah, and I think moving on to the next question, I believe, Izzy, do you want to unmute and ask it?
Sure. Thank you, Sean. I'm Izzy. I am one of the co-presidents of FASA this year. I'm a junior studying industrial and operations engineering. My question is, what are tangible and sustainable ways we can fight against racism and acts of hate? And do you have any advice on how to prevent feelings of apathy over time? And I guess just a little more context on that, like after all of the onslaught of Black Lives Matter over the summer, like you definitely saw I guess for lack of a better word, hype die down over time. Because people get tired and people can't keep up the same level of like fight in them, I guess. So do y'all have any advice on those tangible ways we can do that on a day-to-day level and keep working towards those goals?
So I just want to tag on to the apathy one real quick, because, exactly at Boeing, we're having these anti-racism discussions and training and diversity inclusion discussions. And to some extent, I think people are just like, oh, this is just, it'll die down, it'll pass. And actually, a lot of our leadership has said this is not just a passing thing, even up to our CEO. I think there definitely is the risk of apathy, right? But to the credit of our leadership, they are pushing to continually have the discussions and make sure everyone's aware. And a lot of people, they didn't realize that that's what Black people go through, right? Being afraid of being pulled over by the police, right? So I think just being exposed to people's stories has helped fight against the hate or even misunderstanding or lack of awareness. And that's probably the most tangible way that we've done it at work and in the work setting. But I'll let Marita and Michelle speak to. They probably got better experiences than I.
Michelle, do you want to chime in? Or no pressure, I can go.
You can go and I can go after you.
Okay. I mean, I'll also address your second point first. I mean, these fights are not things that we're going to win quickly, right? So you have to take care of yourself and sustain yourself so that you can engage over time, right? You might want to go all in at some point, and that's great, but also pace yourself, right? Like this, the silly thing about like, on the plane when the oxygen masks come down, put yours on first so you can take care of others. Like that's true, that's real. I'm very good at saying it, but not good at doing it. So I will caveat that. Yeah, I say that to my interns all the time. I'm like, I'm not leading by example and I know it, yeah. But in terms of what you can do, I mean, it sounds like you all are already involved, in your campus community and other communities, like keep doing that work, keep having the hard conversations, but keep learning. But I think one practical, tangible thing I can tell you is over the past year, my organization has partnered with a group called Hollaback, and we've been offering free online bystander intervention trainings. So it's a 1-hour interactive online session where we talk, if incorporated aspects of Asian American history, we talk about what our community is facing right now, but then we talk through like, what are the things that hold people back from acting when they see or experience harassment, right? We talk about this bystander effect where everyone freezes and nobody does anything. And we talk about the ways that you can assess what's happening and try to break through that. And we talk through Hollaback's 5 Ds of bystander intervention. So it's a range of tactics that you can use to get involved. From like really easy distract, literally cause a distraction to divert the attention of the harasser, to direct intervention, different ways that you can, step in and try to stop what's happening. But the lowest stakes and easiest one is, the name doesn't match, but it's so that they can call it the 5 Ds. It's called delay. And this is where if, after the moment has passed, you go to the person that faced the harassment and you just check in with them and see if they're okay. And we know that can go a really long way towards mitigating the harm that they experienced. So that is something that everyone can do, even if maybe the moment passed too quickly or you felt that it was unsafe to directly intervene, you can at least do something to try to help the person that was harassed feel taken care of, right? So this is something that we teach. It's readily accessible. We've had really high demand for our training. So the last 2 sessions have actually, I think, already closed out, but we just added some more dates. So I will drop the link in the chat box so you can all take a look at that. So that is something you can do in relatively short order that I hope will be helpful. I'm done.
It was really funny. I was gonna say take a nap because again, I'm with you. I mean, especially not especially, but in the education world, it's just teachers doing the most all the time and feeling like they have to do 110% all the time, and recognizing that you can't, or that that's a unrealistic expectation of all of us, and you want to prevent burnout, and so it's okay every once in a while to take that rest. And I would say also, this is not like a direct like fighting. This is probably a little bit more to the other question, but it's part of this rest part is just really paying attention to your classmates, and seeing how they are. And I think this relates to your last part. Again, it's been tiring, right? And every once in a while I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this anymore. And, but usually it's like, I see my coworkers and just seeing them even on a screen makes me want to push forward. But, there are times when my colleague who is Black, who was like just holding a lot of this and has, a young Black son and all this stuff. There was a point when he was leading a meeting and I had this weird sense that he was holding a lot. And I texted him and I said, hey, do you want me to take this meeting? Because I think or do you need any support? Because I think that you're holding a lot right now. He was like, actually, can you lead the meeting? Because I can't do it right now. And so I think sometimes figuring out how do you have, people's back. But, and then there's, education is a huge, way for us to fight this is for our students to just learn more about different perspectives, but also for them to recognize, like, how do they recognize that someone's being racist against them? I think sometimes, like I said, I grew up like pretending like nothing was wrong half the time. So I think it's also really recognizing it and teaching people young.
And I believe, Jolene, would you want to unmute to ask your question?
Yeah, for sure. So, hi, my name's Jolene. I'm serving as one of FASA's co-social chairs this year. I'm a sophomore studying nursing. And I guess some context for my question, like, I'm lucky enough to feel relatively safe in Ann Arbor. For me, my fears stem more from my parents who are living in a predominantly white community, and they don't have like a strong like support system with no one really like checking in on them. So like, I guess for me, it's just like, what are some ways that like maybe like that can quell my fears, I guess, especially with the increasing prevalence of anti-Asian behaviors and violence. And then like, do you have any recommendations on like how to keep ourselves or like, for example, my parents safe during these times?
Yeah, that's hard. I do know that, and sorry if you said where your parents are, but I know that in a lot of parts of the country, community-led efforts have grown up where they're soliciting volunteers to accompany elders and others who might feel unsafe while they're out and about. So things like that are cropping up, but I know our parents don't listen to us, but you might want to encourage them to think back to your elementary school days and use the buddy system. That's not going to fix everything, but I feel like there is safety in numbers, or at least people might think twice about doing something if you are with others. I hate that we have to have this conversation, first of all, but we do. And then, to take for ourselves, I mean, I've done self-defense courses. I feel like some are good, some are not. I mean, I think it is just, being aware of your surroundings. Trying to arm yourself with some of the tactics I discussed. Arm yourself isn't the right term, but be equipped so that, you have thought through how you might react in a situation. That is a huge part of, it's like forewarned is forearmed. So you sort of have thought through like what you would do if something happened. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is very basic, I know, but that's what I'm able to offer right now. Alyssa, Michelle, do you have other suggestions?
It's a hard one because I ask myself this all the time. And again, I live in Oakland, and a lot of, something happened last week to an elderly Thai man who was assaulted and ended up dying just blocks from my old apartment. And so, so I think about this and I mean, but I've shifted things that I do. I definitely am not a text walker. But I do listen to things, but I've shifted my running, like where I go. I think about like where is going to be the most populated area where other people would see me, if something happens. I make sure someone knows that I'm like going for a run. I don't go out when it's dark anymore. It's just, I mean, again, I hate that this is a conversation that we have to have, but kind of some basic stuff that maybe, was happening before all of this too.
I just stay home and don't go out. I'm a recluse. So, no, but really, my mom lives down the street from me, right? I think I told you guys that before. And, you know, I'll go grocery shopping for her, and I will bring her things. I'll go grocery shopping late at night, and she will scold me for going out by myself late at night. My husband doesn't seem to care if I go out late at night. So, you know, but I definitely do, you know, make sure I'm aware of my surroundings, and just walk fast with the keys out. You know, everyone's taught that, but yeah, generally I just avoid going out. Like I haven't left the house today, I don't think so. But yeah, I really don't have much to offer other than what, you know, Michelle and Marita have already shared. They're more they're in more urban areas than I am too. So.
Okay, we're approaching time now. Thank you, all three of you, for your answers. So yeah, 6:30, we're stopping. So I wanted to leave 5 minutes at the end to Popcorn Christine to talk about PCN. So if you want to go ahead.
Hello, it is I again. I'm going to screen share. You may or may not have seen this. Perhaps I might have shared it with some alum already. But our Philippine Cultural Night this year is second semester, and we are super excited to be showcasing a little bit of our culture to lots and lots of people, and would love to see some alumni tuning in. It will be on YouTube Live, all previously filmed before. And what's super cool about this year's PCN, because it is virtual, is we have the largest external presence we've ever had. So we have dances coming in from Loyola, Chicago, Oakland, Purdue, and it's going to be a fun time. Sean actually choreographed one of the dances that you may be watching, Coconut Boys. It has a formal name. I forgot what the formal name is. But we are basically putting on this event to raise some money for our chosen charity this year, which is Advancement for Rural Kids, ARC. So if you would like to donate, that is also an option. We can set something up. We can Venmo FASA at UMich, but I know perhaps you might not have Venmo. So you can email us and we can figure it out. And also another cool thing, that we usually have a flyer design contest every year. And this year, one of our freshmen won, and we're so happy. Amanda, so I think she's on this call, but she did 2 versions. I think it's cool, night and day mode. And I could send this over to Sean so he can send it to alumni. Yeah, we're pretty excited to share it with you all and hope to see you tune in.
So I posted that to the Go Blue Reunion FASA site that some of the folks have already.
Thank you.
Hello, before everyone heads out, I'd like to take a group screenshot. So if you're able to open your cameras, if you're not right now, that'd be awesome. Smiling faces. All right, I'll give everyone a few more seconds. Okay, smiles, 3, 2, 1. Yay, thank y'all.
Okay, so that is a wrap for this event. Thank you to our lovely speakers for speaking at Pinay Perspectives. I always really value alumni input because it is very rare that they respond to us, as I mentioned frequently. So thank you so much. You're not even know. Alyssa and Reno and all of you have helped out a lot in making that connection a little more solid. So I will reach out to all three of you for more of a recap in the near future. So look out for that. But otherwise, thank you all for attending, alumni or general member.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.